Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Sun Prairie. I am the mayor of the city of Sun Prairie. I'm Paul Esser, and I want to welcome you here today. It's a pleasure to have you here. There are 7 mayors in Dane County, and we meet periodically to discuss items of mutual interest. This morning we had a meeting and we discussed the issue of levy limits that are facing our communities here in the state of Wisconsin. And these are the limits that are put on us by the state legislature that has limited the abilities of our communities to raise funds to support our operations. Dane County is growing fast, and so are our cities. To keep up with this growth and maintain the high quality of life that our residents expect, we need to invest in city services and infrastructure. This includes funding for police officers, firefighters, EMS staff, as well as parks, public works, and libraries, which our communities rely on. All of these things require money, but the ability to raise the funds we need has been taken away from us. At the same time, our costs are going up because of inflation, but the limits on our budgets mean that we do not have enough revenue to cover these rising costs. We have very few ways to address this problem. As a result, our cities are forced to look for other ways to raise money. In Sun Prairie, we've added a vehicle registration fee, oftentimes called a wheel tax. This wasn't something we wanted to do, but it's one of the few options we had. Sun Prairie will also likely to need to hold a referendum in the next couple of years, as other cities have already done or will be doing soon. Referendums can be complicated and hard to explain, but they're necessary to keep our communities running. Other mayors are going to share their plans and challenges with you here this morning with the restrictions that have been imposed on us. If all of this could be avoided if the Wisconsin legislature would give us the relief we need from these strict property tax limitations. So now I'm going to hand this microphone over to the mayor of the city of Madison, Mayor Rhodes Conway, for her thoughts on the current situation. Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. Hi, my name is Satya Rhodes Conway. I'm the mayor of Madison, and I want to say a big thank you to Mayor Esser and the staff here in Sun Prairie for hosting us, and to all of the other mayors for joining today. Like Mayor Esser said, we have a lot in common, and we meet as regularly as we can to discuss all sorts of issues, including housing and transportation, and apropos of today, budgeting. One of the things that we all talk about and recognize is that Dane County's population is growing gangbusters. And that's a good thing, right? It is the right side of the problem to have. We would not be happy to see Dane County's population shrinking. But growth does bring challenges, and it requires resources. And what we know is that the population growth in Dane County, and perhaps more importantly, the economic growth in Dane County, is driving the economy and the population growth in the state of Wisconsin. And so I think I can confidently say that all of us would agree that the state of Wisconsin should be investing in that success because it is in the best interests of our state for Dane County to keep growing, both in terms of population and in terms of our economy. We know that we have to invest in that success, and we would hope that the state would do the same. And you're going to hear a lot about the things that local governments do. Mayor Esser already spoke a little bit about it. I believe that fundamentally, the job of local government is to invest in the infrastructure that underpins economic growth and quality of life. That's what we do. That's our job. But we can't make those investments if we don't have the resources to do so. So all of us here are doing our best to invest in that economy, to invest in that future, to invest in that quality of life. And we're doing it with the tools that the legislature has left us. Some of us have gone to referendum. Some of us are going to referendum. Some of us will go in the future. Some of us have used a vehicle registration fee. Many of us have used different types of special charges. But we are running out of options. And we need the state to give us more options. Again, I think I can speak for all of us in saying none of us wants to go to our communities and have to ask them to pass a referendum. None of us wants to have to contemplate cuts in services. But we're working with what the state has given us. If the state, for example, would revisit the levy limit, that means that none of us are able to take full advantage of the growth in our communities, that would help. If the state would take another run at the question of shared revenue, that would help. If the state would consider allowing more communities to do a local option sales tax, that would help. If the state, particularly for us in Dane County, but also for folks in the Fox Valley and around Eau Claire and La Crosse, if the state would allow us to do regional transportation authorities, that would help. Honestly, if the state would just pay the municipal services bills that they owe us, that would help. In Madison, if the state would pay what they owe on the municipal services bill, we'd have $13 million more every year in our budget. So we really are looking to our state leaders to do the best that they can to invest in Dane County and our communities. And by doing so, they'll invest in the entire state of Wisconsin and our collective success. Again, I want to emphasize, none of us enter into this lightly. Right? We take our jobs very seriously, and we're trying to be fiscally responsible. But again, we are left with the tools that the state has given us, and we're going to have to use them. And so I'm really glad to stand in solidarity with the mayors here, and I thank them for their collective wisdom and support and the work that they're doing in their communities. And now it's my pleasure to hand it over to Mayor Julia from Fitchburg.
Thank you, everyone, for being here. Thank you, well said, Sacha. So I am talking about particularly what is going on in Fitchburg. So the financial strain that we are experiencing in Fitchburg is not unique to what is happening in other municipalities all over the state. The city of Fitchburg has grown almost 34% in the last 10 years, and that growth has made a big impact in demanding for services, infrastructure, and other operational cost. So as the city of Fitchburg has grown, it has been an increasing challenge to invest in services to meet the needs of our growing community. Police, fire, and transit service have all felt the strain of increasing community needs, and the city has identified the need for additional funding to alleviate this challenge. Our operational costs have been increased due to the number of factors, including increasing cost of recruit and retain, our professional services, inflationary pressure on equipment, the cost of supply, material, and construction, and other operating expenses associated with maintaining the high-level service that we are providing to our taxpayers. Because of the state-imposed levy limit, we are going to a referendum in November, asking our taxpayers for almost $3.6 million to increase the property tax levy to fund this position and bolster public safety and transit service. We must ask our residents for this to help us. And it was not, the Common Council have we working on this for almost 14 months. We didn't take this lightly. It was very difficult decision to go to a referendum, and I hope the resident of Fitchburg vote yes, because otherwise we will need to go and do some cuts. I think we are providing a great services in our community for the city that the residents are paying. So. And I will share what Mayor Madison mentioned about that. We need to have more local control in our municipality. We need to be able to increase our revenues according to our needs or unexpected cost, because we cannot do it right now. Thank you. Oh, and now I'm going to introduce the Mayor of Monona, Mary O'Connor.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Huia. I'm Mary O'Connor, the Mayor of Monona. Monona is going to referendum in November, and I would just like to address a little bit about why we've decided to do that. Wisconsin municipalities are only allowed to increase their property tax levy for operating purposes by the percentage increase in their equalized value due to net new construction in the previous year. This requirement has placed unreasonable constraints on Monona's operating budget for some time. We are completely surrounded by the city of Madison and don't have any cornfields available for new development. All of our development is by necessity redevelopment, which is complicated, expensive, and time-consuming. We've done several redevelopment projects in recent years, but not nearly enough to provide the increased tax dollars required to give Monona residents the services they've come to expect. The increase in state revenue sharing funds that we received last year made all the difference for our 2024 budget when we had no net new construction. But that was a one-year increase that's now part of our base budget. Monona's numbers for 2025 tell it all. Our net new construction was 0.45% of our equalized value. This means that we're allowed to increase the property tax levy for operating purposes by a total of $25,000 in 2025. That $25,000 is supposed to cover pay increases for 75 full-time employees, along with increases in their health insurance premiums, supplies and equipment, and third-party contracts, not to mention inflation. Our garbage and recycling collection costs alone have increased by $100,000 in the past year, so $25,000 is obviously not enough money. In Monona, we've cut our operating budget as much as we can, implemented a number of efficiencies, and have budgeted very carefully for years. We're losing experienced, highly valued employees to other communities who can afford to pay them more. We simply have to increase our employee compensation and be able to adequately fund our other increasing operating expenses. We've reached the point where we're down to muscle and bone. There's no more to cut without cutting basic city services. So that's why we're asking Monona taxpayers to allow us to increase the tax levy in the November election. Wisconsin has to consider a change in the way local municipalities are allowed to fund their operations. And Monona is ready to work together along with our other mayors and the legislature to come up with a common sense, realistic solution. Thank you. Now I'd like to turn it over to Mayor Kuhn from Middleton.
Thank you to the mayor of Monona. I do have a special thank you to her. One of her lost staffers is my new city administrator, and he is amazing. He can run with me. She trains them so well, like many of us. But in saying that, we are going in that same direction, and it is hard. You know, the borders of Middleton they're maturing. And we're doing a lot of redevelopment because of that. So we learn a lot from each other, which is why we stand in solidarity together. Today, as one of many mayors across Dane County, I'm here to stress the importance of addressing the funding challenges that our cities face, and we support each other. Dane County is the fastest growing county in Wisconsin, and our communities are helping drive the state's economy, like Mayor Satya was explaining. But despite this, the policies in place are limiting our ability to reinvest in the very services that make our region so successful. We are being asked to do more with less, as you've heard. And these restrictions, such as the levy limits, are forcing our communities into difficult decisions. There are a lot of cities in our county seeking referendums this November just to keep up with basic services. And that's a situation no community should face simply for trying to keep its residents safe, its infrastructure strong, and its growth sustainable. We as local leaders are united in calling on the state legislature to remove these restrictions and allow us the flexibility to meet the needs of our growing populations. The future of our cities and the well-being of our residents depend on it. And with that, I offer the opportunity to Mayor Swadley of Stoughton, and hopefully he will not take my city administrator, but it might happen.
Good afternoon, and thank you for being here. Stoughton has experienced record growth as measured by net new construction in 2023. The 2% tax levy increase allowed under the state-imposed levy limit laws passed 13 years ago does not cover the rising costs and has left us with a budget deficit. Municipalities often have to provide services before development is completed and additional revenue is added. Aging populations, increasing emergency management call volumes, combined with declining volunteerism, is forcing us to hire people for positions that historically we relied on volunteers for. This has been exacerbated since the pandemic and is not sustainable. My wife and I owned a pizza franchise for 19 years. If the price of the ingredients, building costs, insurance, or labor went up, we raised our prices proportionately. The spending caps do not allow municipalities to raise their prices proportionately. We compete with other government agencies in the private sector to recruit and retain staff. Many public officials have been demonized and chosen to retire early or change professions. Local municipalities need to have the ability, without going to referendum, to compete and protect our most important assets, our people, to maintain safe communities, provide efficient services, and grow Wisconsin's economy. As mayor, I welcome and would appreciate increased opportunities to collaborate with state legislators to seek solutions. It's my honor to introduce Mayor Diaz from Verona.
Yeah, so communities throughout the state of Wisconsin provide essential services: police, fire, EMS, public works, parks, and the library. If the state government were to help fix or better improve the shared revenue formula, it'd be helping people and communities throughout the state. This is not something just for Dane County. This is something that can improve the quality of life for everybody in Wisconsin. And ultimately, I think that's what we should all want. Wisconsin is a great place to live, and we should make sure there's not backsliding as different communities deal with inflation and other challenges. Ultimately, we all have to work on spending money for emergency services and everything else that keeps our community and our community members safe and keeps our communities good places to live. So I would just call upon state government to take another crack at fixing the shared revenue program. And I guess I would also say that we don't expect state government to solve all of our problems, but it would be nice if they would come in and help us out, because they would be helping out the whole state. And with that, I will turn it back over to Mayor Esser for questions.
Thank you, Luke. So we are available for questions. If you have any of us, you can address questions too, and we are prepared for that. Are there any questions? Please.
So a property tax increase is a hard sell to people on both sides of the political spectrum. How do you go about selling that in maybe the easiest way to sell it to somebody?
So I can answer that on behalf of Sun Prairie. What we're doing out here, we have had a series of meetings with our city council members, a strategic plan, and we have developed a strategy on how we intend to approach that. When we get into the referendum situation in a couple of years, at that point we are already will have begun conversations with our community members, hearing what they want to see happening in the city in the years ahead. Sun Prairie is growing rapidly, so the needs are growing rapidly, and this is an opportunity to get the community's input before we come back to them with a referendum, and then have that referendum tailored to meet the needs that they're interested in.
Can I answer
Yeah,
that?
please.
I wanted to share that Middleton had a referendum in 2022, and we did a lot of what the Sun Prairie mayor was saying, but we also focused on what the actual increase would be. We focused on 2 police officers, a parks person, and the cost of a communications director, because we do so many great events, and yet people were not showing up. And so we knew we had to get that information out, because we are spending money to make events, but how do you get people to the events, right? So you have to have that communication piece. But what we did was we made that 30-second soundbite so that people could understand what they're getting from it. But we also did, I know the mayor of Madison, she is communicating this message out for the things that this would include. But also, those town halls that they're doing throughout Madison is what we did in Middleton as well. And that allowed people to come, and you would think not a lot of people would come to a town hall about budgets. They did. And so I'm going to share this with the mayor of Madison, because she probably knows people are coming out as well. But it is possible to get folks across the political spectrum interested, but it's knowing what the voters are asking for that increase, because all of us have extra costs.
Yeah. Yeah, I would just say that, we have talked a lot about what it means to invest in Madison's future and what it means to invest in the future growth of our community and the quality of life and the services that we provide. We also talk about what is the impact and what are the choices before us. So Madison's referendum, on the average home in Madison, it's about 60 cents a day, which is not a huge impact for folks. I believe that we have a prosperous community. I think actually all of our communities are relatively prosperous, and the people value the services they get from local government, and I'm hopeful that they will be willing to vote yes in November and to make that investment in our future.
What I will add is, like in the city of Fitchburg, we are implementing a couple of listening sessions. We started last week through October, so we are informing the resident. We are doing mailers, and also we are having one-to-one conversation with our taxpayers. And the impact on the average home in the city of Fitchburg is going to be $24.87. So we compare that it's going to be around $268 a year, the increase in the property taxes.
But in Monona, and I think Fitchburg did this also, we've been talking about this for a couple of years, so it's not news to people. We started with a survey, which we had taken input from our staff as to what they need in terms of staffing and operating funds and that type of thing. We put forth the survey that we sent to the community that got I think it was about a 25% response, which is pretty good. I might be a little high on that. But giving them 3 different options, and we've tailored our question based on the option that got the most support. And that survey also served to educate them about our situation. We're planning mailers as well. We have a couple of public information meetings. We have a local low-power radio station. We're informing people about that. I don't know if anyone out there knows that cities are not allowed to really go out and campaign for these. Mainly what we can do is provide the information that people need. So we're hoping that we're trying to educate our public as much as we can. Thank you.
We'll come, Mayor O'Connor. I have another question, Monona specific, and then the rest of the mayors, they can answer. So since Monona is surrounded by those other cities, and like you said, no new construction can really happen, if the referendum weren't to pass in November, what types of services would start to be?
Well, I think for the first year, we have some things that we can institute wheel tax. We definitely will be talking about that. We can institute a charge for garbage and recycling service. People would pay separately, and I know a lot of communities already do that. We have some fund balance. We'd be making some cuts. We would probably go back. I'm sure we would go back to referendum. Not sure exactly when. Next year, there's really only one option, because we're also limited by the state legislature and when we can go to referendum. But we're talking some big cuts, because we can't really cut public safety, and that's over half of our budget. So in order to, and we really think it's important to increase compensation for our employees, because we just can't keep losing them. It's expensive to hire new employees. We've got a lot invested in them in terms of training and all kinds of other things, and we have a very experienced staff, so they need to be paid. So that's going to be our focus. So we could be talking about library hours. We have a city pool. It's a lot of different options. We haven't specifically made a decision on which is what it would be, but it has to be more than $10,000 here and 10 there. It's going to be a fair amount of money. So thank you.
And I would just add, what you've heard today is you've heard examples of communities that have the ability to grow and some that don't have the ability to grow. And I asked the question, should local government and school districts spend an incredible amount of time and resources to pass referendums, or should we be focusing our time on providing services and educating our children?
Well put.
Do you have more questions for us? Please.
Hi, Nicole Pollack with the State Journal. You guys all spoke about the limits on municipalities' options and the changes that you want to see, but I'm wondering if you'd be willing to talk a little bit more about just how we got into this situation and also what it will take politically to get out of it.
So
I can do that.
Yeah, please. You're probably more versed in it.
I don't know about the politics, but I can do the how. So you've heard a lot of conversation about the levy limit, and I think it's really important to understand that going back, say, 15 years ago, all of our communities, all communities across the state of Wisconsin, could raise the levy limit by 3% plus the net new construction factor, the equalized value factor that we've been talking about. I think that's important. The equalized value factor, which you can hear the disparity amongst communities on how that plays out. So for Madison, we've been growing. We have the opportunity to grow. That gives us between 1 and 2%, right? I heard somebody over here said like around 2%, right? So that's at least something, right? But obviously Monona doesn't have that. Yeah. And so the 3% used to allow us to maybe compensate for inflation, and then the equalized value factor would allow us to compensate for growth. And was that constraining still? Yes, maybe, but at least it worked. It allowed us to work with our budgets and get the funds that we needed. 13 years ago, when the former governor got elected, the 3% went away. And we were left with just the equalized value formula. And inflation has been more than zero for 13 years. And you cannot keep up with both inflation and a growing community on something less than 2%. It's just not possible. I'll give you just one example from Madison. We pick up the trash. And each trash route in the city of Madison takes 2 people and a truck. And there's a certain number of households. I don't have it memorized what it is for a trash route, but we are adding new households every year in the city of Madison. We have not added the positions or the new truck in over 7 years. It's not sustainable to ask the same folks with the same equipment to serve a rapidly growing community by adding more and more households to every trash route. At some point, you run out of hours in the day, right? And so we need to have that ability to keep up with both inflation and with the growth in our communities. And if we don't have that under the levy limit, then we need something else from the state to help us compensate for those 2 factors. So that's, to me, is the root of the problem. And so one option at the state level, as I said, is that they could adjust the levy limit formula and allow us to have more room under a levy limit. Other folks have talked about shared revenue. Some communities really benefited from the increase in shared revenue, but I think, as you've heard today, it wasn't enough. And that's what I hear from communities around the state as well, is that while we are grateful for the increase and we are happy that a deal was reached, it doesn't solve the problem. So I think there are already bipartisan conversations happening at the state level. We talked earlier this morning about identifying our collective priorities and talking with the Dane County legislators. And that's something that I'm excited about doing collectively. I know there are other organizations of elected officials in the state that are having those same conversations, and we'll be working to get the ear of the legislature and see if there are. It will necessarily have to be a bipartisan solution, and to see if there are bipartisan solutions. But I want to come back to what Mayor Diaz said, which is anything that we are asking for, or that would help our communities, will help communities all across the state of Wisconsin. These are not problems that only impact Dane County. These are problems that impact every single county, every single municipality in the state. And so I would hope that as folks around the state are representing their constituents in the legislature, that they could see their way to helping those constituents, which will also help us.
Anything else we can answer for you? We are here, all of us in one place. That's unusual. 7. Well, thank you, everybody, for coming out today. It's been our pleasure to have you here in Sun Prairie, and we appreciate you giving us the opportunity to share our viewpoints on the needs of our communities. They are legitimate. These are not issues we're making up just to unsettle people. These are real issues that we're grappling with and have no easy solution, and we're appealing for assistance. Thank you all for being here with us today. Thank you.